Hi, this is Zoe, and this is episode 93 of the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast. 93, can you believe it? We're talking about what to do with gaps in your calendar, gaps in your day. And you'll be surprised. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
So I wanted to start this episode with a shout out to V and Carlo at the Australian Diabetes Educators Association, who took time out of their week last week to give me some feedback on the podcast. It's always great to hear from listeners because, to be honest, it's like a big ocean of silence when you do a podcast. Unless people reach out and tell you that they liked it or didn't like it, you have no idea. You can get the statistics off the various websites, but otherwise it's largely a secretive experience as to whether or not my episodes are landing. So V and Carlo took some time out and they let me know about some of the key things that are working and not working with the podcast, particularly around the technical sound side of things. And in listening to them, I realized that a few of my episodes weren't recorded that well. The technology wasn't right, the setup was distracting, the noise wasn't so good. So, and to be honest, that kind of stuff, that kind of tech stuff, I find incredibly boring. It's so boring. I just want to walk into something and press play and have it all be working perfectly for me and not worry about the technical details of it. But alas, I don't have that done yet. So we're working on it. And I thank everyone who is listening who has given me feedback on what they like and what they don't like. It helps this podcast be better. And I'm grateful for that. All right, so we're talking about gaps. And this came about from a couple of different situations. We're heading home. It's not even my home. It's my sister's home, and she's in New Jersey. And last time we visited, it was a whirlwind. And we arrived, and her kids at the time were 7 and 5. So as you can imagine, it was a busy household. The day after we arrived, after a pretty long trip, like you have to go across a couple of oceans and a continent to get to New Jersey from Australia. So we arrived pretty jet lagged. The next day, my sister had us up and bundled out the door, heading onto the train to go into New York City to watch a show, go out for lunch, and then come back again. I was asleep on my feet. It was really exhausting. I loved it. I was excited that she organized such a beautiful experience for us. And I really struggled through the day. And that was kind of the pace of the entire holiday. My sister is a very action-oriented lady. She likes to fill her days with activity. She showed me her activity calendar for the kids. So week by week, they have things up on their calendar about who needs to be where. There's swimming lessons, there's wrestling for William, there's other activities, after school activities, before school activities, and then there's my sister's activities as well. She's on the parent and teacher committee and involved in a play, and they all have somewhere to be and somewhere to do. It's just never ending. I got exhausted just looking at that. And there's something exciting about that, right? To have so many activities and so much diversity in your life, it's good. It's a richness of living. And that used to be me, to be honest. I used to be a type A personality, driving forward, filling my time with activity. It's something that I picked up as a teenager studying for high school. I was just always doing work stuff. And that followed me through my entire work life. Until about 15 years ago, not even quite. When was 2005? 13 years ago, when I got cancer. And yeah, that kind of put a stopper in everything that I was doing. And being on a constant go schedule didn't work when you're trying to recover from cancer. And it gave me 6 months to really reflect on how I live my life and world. And this came back in another reflection just last week, actually. In Thought Leaders Business School, which is my professional community where I go for renewal and development, I am a black belt, which is the top of the achievement tree, if you like, in some terms. A community elder, I guess, is another way of describing it. And for this quarter, I'm the black belt in residence. And what that means is each week, a couple times a week, I blog about what I'm doing day to day. And the idea is to share with the rest of the community about how a black belt runs their practice and how they do business, so they can learn from successes and failures. And for me, I was blogging last week about Tuesday or Wednesday afternoon, where I was doing some work on my deck, which is one of the benefits of working for yourself. You get to choose where and when you work. And it was a glorious afternoon, and it was pretty comfortable. And I fell asleep with the laptop in my lap, which has never happened to me before, ever. And I had a nice snooze for about 40 minutes. And I reflected on this experience about having enough space in your day to have these kinds of gaps and the value of them. Because when I first started my practice, I defaulted back to what I knew as before cancer, which is do. And I took some advice from a mentor that says work in the cracks of your day so that you don't make any excuses for not doing the thinking work, which is often the thing that gets pushed aside. So that's developing intellectual property. So I got in the habit of filling all the cracks in my day with work. So I do things like if I'm waiting for a meeting, I draft out ideas for blogs and podcasts. If I was on a plane, I'd be writing my newsletter. If I was between meetings and I couldn't go to a coffee shop because there wasn't quite enough time, I'd open up my laptop in my car and write a book chapter. Now, this all meant hyperproductivity, and I got a lot of stuff done. But it also meant I had zero time to rest and recover. I was just constantly go. My brain went from one thing to the next to the next. And we know from lots and lots of research that this ain't so good. And I think it's interesting, I talk a lot about boundless leadership, and there is a paradox with boundless leadership. Boundless leadership is about no borders, no barriers. Everything is possible when you do things right. And within that, no limitations, there are limitations. So I should say there are no limits, yet there are limitations. There are definitely some physical things that we need to optimize and deal with, which do constrain us and contain us. And I wrote a blog about it this week too. And the 4 things that are limitations that we need to optimize are time, sleep, focus, and health. Interestingly, inserting pause and rest and gaps into your day helps optimize each of those: time, sleep, focus, and health. In their book, The Rules of Engagement, that's not the name of the book. The name of the book is The Power of Full Engagement, and I will put a link in the show notes, which will be at zoerouth.com/podcast/gaps. Powerful engagement, managing energy, not time, is the key to high performance and personal renewal. And that is by Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz. It's a classic text, been around for 10, 15 years, I think. And in it, they talk about how it's not time that you need to maximize, it's your energy. And there's your physical energy, your emotional energy, and your purpose energy. And that's been a pretty fundamental aspect of how I run myself and run my leadership practice as well, as being able to balance each of those sets of energy. And they talk a lot about imagining yourself as a corporate athlete where you have full-on exertion and then full-on rest. And that the top elite sprinters do that. They go full-out energy and then full-out rest. See, I've always been good at full-out energy and crap at full-out rest. So it is something that I've been working on significantly over the last, 15 years, really. And still working on mastery of that. But I think it was good last week when I woke up from my slumber with the laptop on my lap after a snooze going, wow, I actually gave myself permission to have more gaps in my calendar, to do the work that I need to do, the deep thinking, and also to incorporate some rest in there. There's this great article from Huffington Post, again, I will post the links on the show notes, around sleep and what happens to your brain when you do sleeping. I think it also happens when you nap. So you don't have to be 8 hours of sleeping to get these benefits. So 5 key things happen in your brain. 1, when you're sleeping, your brain makes decisions. It consolidates and works unconsciously or subconsciously around decision makings that you need to do. It consolidates memories. 3, it makes creative connections. I love that part. You ever woken up from sleep and go, yeah, I'll do that. In fact, that happened to me today. As I was drifting into consciousness this morning, a decision and connection I needed to make in my business around one of my projects came out. I'm like, oh yeah, why don't I just do that? So having sleep and rest allows the brain to work on problems for you. Number 4 is to clear out toxins. So your brain needs to purify itself as it rests. So that's what happens when you do sleeping. And the last one is learn and remember how to perform physical tasks. So that's why sleep is all really important. Some really cool stuff happens when you're zonked out. And I think if you need to have a nap, woohoo, let all that good stuff come on. Another article, Psychology Today, talked about how to take an effective break. And I think this is really important because some people take a break and what they'll do is they'll go off and they'll go for a smoke or get a cup of coffee or go to a colleague and whinge about something. This is actually not allowing your brain to do the thing that it needs to do. And this article talks about an effective break needs psychological detachment. And what this means is mentally disengaging from work thoughts that cause you stress. So when you actually disengage completely from the work thoughts, it allows your brain to reboot and to come good again, if you like, and naturally recover. So because sometimes those anxious work thoughts, they're the ones that cause you to have fatigue. So if you disengage from that, then you can naturally recover. So how does one take a good break? It's all about the gaps. So it comes from crafting a schedule where you give yourself permission for those gaps. So between meetings, instead of scheduling back-to-back meetings, insert 15 minutes. It's something that I'm working with my team on who manage my calendar, except when I sneak in there and book things in, which is bad. Inserting 15 minutes between appointments allows a little bit of gappiness in there. Ensuring that you have days where not everything is scheduled up the wazoo, not every minute of the day allocated, it gives you some space. And when you get to those spaces, which look like blanks in your calendar, sure, you have things to do. Give yourself permission also to be. Because really, gaps are for being. Just being. Just being. And that means sitting on the deck, listening to the birds, enjoying the wind, enjoying the sunshine. Just enjoy being where you are in the moment. My friend Clive Smallman also talks about gaps are for becoming. And I love this as a distinction too, because it's in the being that you are also becoming. And I think about this when I think about things in nature. We just went on a bushwalk this weekend up in the mountains. And out there, everything is just quiet and extraordinary and simply being. And the beingness of the wilderness, things are also becoming. There are little wildflowers blooming. There are trees growing up to the sky. There are trees dying. There is nature recycling and recircling on itself. The river is flowing. And what is the river becoming? It's eroding and it's evolving as well. So in the beingness of the moment, there is another timelessness of becoming. And I love that. So if we don't give ourselves permission for being, we have no becoming. We're just doing. And doing doesn't necessarily allow us to become more. Doing challenges us in all sorts of different ways, but it doesn't necessarily create those spaces where we can reach for more and we can clarify what we truly want, where we can acknowledge where we've been. It's only in the gaps that those things happen. It's not in the doing part. I love that, don't you? So that is my encouragement for you to create gaps in your calendar. And then when you get to them, to give yourself permission for those little gaps for being that are also becoming. It's one of the things that we're going to look deeply at in the Edge of Leadership Conference, which is coming up March 21-22 in Canberra next year in 2019. And I'm super excited for this experience because I have to really look at how we're planning it out and make sure that we're not defaulting to old habits like trying to jam too much content in there and having no gaps. And in the design of this program, we've put in opportunities for gaps, opportunities for people to enjoy where they are because the location is stunning, enjoy who they're with because the company is going to be awesome, and just simply be. Let things digest and process in their experiences. It's one of the chief complaints I've had about events wherever I've gone is that it's the fire hose methodology where it's speaker after speaker after speaker and your brain has no opportunity to consolidate, to digest, to process, and to apply So I don't want to do that with my crew who are kind of come to the Edge of Leadership on conference. It's important to have gaps in there where people can just take a break from the focus and process. So those are a couple of different opportunities where you can apply the gap methodology to your personal experience. 1, in your calendar for the week, 2, on your day-to-day experience, and 3, if you're designing programs or hosting an event or even hosting a meeting, is that you create gaps where people can process stuff. All right, I hope you like this. I'd love to hear about your experiences with gaps and what you do or don't do in the gaps. In the meantime, live well, lead well.